Imagine cycling a big creature like Oliphant and putting it into play for just 1 mana.
Oh my god, it's amazing!
Today, we will try it in a new brew with the help of Jolted Awake, a card that reanimates creatures for energy counters, and with cards like Goblin Conduit and Galvanic Discharge will help us reach the 6 mana threshold we need. Of course, we run value cards like Traven Inspector and Novice Inspector, which have insane synergy with Core Sky Fisher. Raffine's Informant and Scrapwork Mod will also help with looting cards we may need in the graveyard, like Battle Screech in a deck ready to take the meta by surprise. Our first match is against Grixis Affinity, one of the top decks in the format. We start by cycling an Eagles of the North, hoping to reanimate it with Jolted Awake soon. We then play Traven Inspector while our opponent drops a Mirror Enforcer and passes. I loot a second Eagle for a land, and on my turn I play Raffine's Informant and pass. The opponent holds back on playing cards, so on my turn I use Core Sky Fisher to return Traven Inspector to my hand, then replay it for added value. With no play from them, I crack a clue and find Conduit Goblin, a creature that generates 2 energy counters when it enters the battlefield and gives a slight boost and haste to another creature for the cost of 1 energy. Using its ability, I pump Raffine's Informant and attack with both creatures, hoping for a trade. They immediately play Reckoner's Bargain, and I respond with Galvanic Discharge to kill their artifact. They play a second bargain to prevent damage to their Mirror Enforcer. So I don't get energy counters, but at least I chip away at their life total. They untap, play Ichor Wellspring, and pass. On my turn I play Novice Inspector, give it haste with the Goblin's ability and attack, so they kill my Core Sky Fisher. I put them down to 13 and pass. Another Wellspring joins their board along with a second Mirror Enforcer. On my turn I play an Inspector, use the Sky Fisher to return the Goblin to my hand, then cycle another Eagle for a land and replay the Goblin to pump my bird, attacking with it alone. I hold back, suspecting they might have a Shaman. Sure enough, they draw 5 cards and find 1. Luckily, I kill it before they can grant it Death Touch and Lifelink, so my board is wiped. I draw a card with a clue, and Jolted Awake returns my Goblin, which grants haste to Raffine's Informant. After looting a card, I hit my opponent for 5. Unfortunately, they have a full hand, and after playing a Kenko Artificer, I concede. Post sideboard, things change drastically, as 4 Dust to Dust are essential against Affinity decks. 2 Pyroblasts also come in handy, and it's just a matter of nuking their lands and applying pressure to force them to concede, bringing us to game 3. With no Dust to Dust in my opening hand, I keep anyway and play a turn 1 Inspector. After some minor setup, I still can't find a Dust to Dust, but I'm slowly building pressure on the board. The downside would be if they find the Shaman to clear it. The opponent plays Makeshift Munitions and passes, so I crack a clue, play an Inspector, and attack with the team. Post-combat, I usually found to fetch a mountain and pass. They pass again, so I play an Inspector with haste, reducing them to 8 after they kill my Goblin. As expected, they play the Shaman and try to grant it Death Touch again. I attempted to kill it with Galvanic Discharge, but they used Dispute in response, and my board was nuked. I decided to bring back my mod, discarding the dead Pyroblast I'd been holding, and used Jolted Awake on Conduit Goblin to give an extra boost to the mod. Unfortunately, our Boros creature got killed, but I was still able to get my opponent down to 6 life. On their turn, they played a land and passed. Feeling confident, I hardcasted an Oliphant and passed. The opponent simply passed back, so I attacked. They used Deadly Dispute to draw some cards and had to sacrifice the Shaman to avoid dying, which brought them down to 1. Post-combat, I slammed down a second Oliphant, and when I countered their Thoughtcast, they conceded. For match 2, I faced John Broodscale, one of the few combo decks that can kill you in a single turn. I opted for an aggressive start while they set up, putting early pressure on the field with my Mod and Goblin. Unfortunately, their Chrysalis slowed down my aggression, but I decided to attack anyway. They blocked the Goblin and sacrificed an Eldrazi in response. With that trigger on the stack, I used Galvanic Discharge to kill it without losing my creature by paying 4 energy. They played a Wellspring, and I cycled another creature for a land. I then looted away my Inspector with Raffine's Informant and brought it back with Jolted Awake. With the fresh energy, I gave haste to my Informant and attacked for 8, bringing them down to 9 before passing. A Shaman wiped my board, and a Broodscale joined the battlefield. I made the mistake of killing it immediately. I drew a card from a clue token, then played Inspector and Informant and passed. However, they were able to assemble the combo, grow their creature large, and have an extra chump blocker. With their win condition in sight, we moved to game 2. I didn't have much to bring in against this deck, so I added a couple of Dust to Dust and hoped they wouldn't be dead cards later on. I kept a decent hand, Planning to apply as much pressure as possible, I looted away a Mutt on turn 2 and attacked. Over the next few turns, I discarded Dust to Dust, holding back on killing the Broodscale in case they were close to comboing, even if it cost me 1 damage. When they cast an enchantment, I let it resolve, forcing them to activate Broodscale's ability. This way, they couldn't add extra Eldrazi tokens in response. With the board clear, I drew a card and attacked, bringing them down to 10. They untapped, and a Rumble found a Shaman, but instead of killing it right away, I attacked with all my creatures to see what would happen. They chump blocked and took the damage, reducing their life to 6. They untapped and played Chrysalis. I let its first ability resolve, then used Galvanic Discharge to kill the Shaman, meaning they'd lose their tokens if they decided to wipe the board. With no other option, they pulled the trigger, leaving only the Chrysalis on the field. I untapped, played Raffine's Informant, discarding a Mutt, and brought back a second one to dig for another card, taking out their only creature in the process and putting them down to 4. I used the Mutt's Unearthed ability to loot away an extra land and attacked for 5. They used Deadly Dispute to draw more cards and followed up with Weather the Storm, keeping them in the game. Despite this, my board presence was overwhelming, especially after resolving another Inspector. They played a Wellspring and a land, but on my turn, I used Unearth on my Mutt, allowing me to attack again and secure the win, moving us to Game 3. For Game 3, I decided to hard mulligan for an aggressive hand and ended up with a solid 5 cards. Drawing Dust to Dust while they started with an artifact was a great start. On turn 2, I pumped Inspector to deal some damage and cracked a clue to dig for a land to set up Dust to Dust. I played a second Inspector, gave it haste, and attacked for 5 before passing. The opponent untapped and used Cleansing Wildfire to fix their mana, followed by Weather the Storm to gain some life. Seeing an opportunity, I used Dust to Dust to exile both lands and attacked for 4. Now, without red or green mana, they only managed to play a tapped bridge. On my turn, I drew a Conduit Goblin, so I played Core Skyfisher along with it. With 2 energy, I gave my creatures haste and attacked, dropping them to 5. They responded with Breath Weapon, wiping the board except for Skyfisher. I drew some cards with a clue token, hoping to find Lightning Bolt, but settled for getting them down to 3. On their turn, they used Deadly Dispute to draw cards, and their Chrysalis now blocked my air attack. I looted an Oliphant for a land and continued drawing cards, hoping for Lightning Bolt, but only found Galvanic Discharge, so I passed. They played Broodscale, but I killed it immediately to prevent them from pumping it with Eldrazi tokens. They followed with Eternal Witness and passed. On my turn, I played Informant, looted a land, and found another Discharge. Since they only had 1 green mana, I waited until they activated Witness's ability to fizzle it, wasting their mana. However, they cleared the board again with Breath Weapon, leaving only Chrysalis standing. Finally, I drew the Lightning Bolt and took the game, securing match 2. While this deck is solid, it struggles against heavy removal decks like Golgari Control or faster ramp decks with large creatures such as Gruul Cascade. Now, with this record, we head to our final match to try for a positive score. For our last match, we faced Mono Red, showcasing how crucial sideboards are in Pauper. The opponent started with a Voldaren Epicure, while I looted away a Battle Screech for later. They removed my creature, so I played Core Skyfisher, bouncing a land, and added Traven Inspector to the board. The opponent responded with a Blast Runner, passing the turn. On my next turn, I looted away Eagles of the North, played Raffine's Informant, discarding Mutt, and then flashed back Battle Screech to build my board. They played a second Blast Runner, and sacrificed a token to cast Kuldota Rebirth, attacking soon after. Luckily, without its buff, I could double block Blast Runner with my birds, taking 4 damage. On my turn, I attacked with Raffine's Informant, and they took the hit. Post-combat, I replayed Core Skyfisher, bouncing Informant to recast it. They untapped, cast Tomb Rider, and passed. I attacked in the air for 5, then played a third Skyfisher, bouncing another one, and replaying it to return Inspector for an extra clue. They passed again, so I swung with my creatures. They double-blocked Informant, bringing them down to 6. I played Inspector and held on to Galvanic Discharge. Their top-decked experimental Synthesizer revealed Lightning Bolt and Kuldota Rebirth. After an attack, I blocked and killed 1 Blast Runner. I untapped, drew a Lightning Bolt, and won Game 1 with an attack and the bolt. Post-sideboard, I brought in Honorable Scout, who is excellent against Red. In Game 2, they started strong with a turn 1 Tomb Rider, followed by Kuldota Rebirth, wiping my board with End the Festivities. Even though I gained life, multiple Goblin Bushwhackers overwhelmed me, leading to a tight match. In Game 3, I kept a decent hand, leading with Traven Inspector and using Galvanic Discharge to kill their Blast Runner. They played Synthesizer, revealing removal for my creature, so I played another Inspector and passed. They sacrificed Synthesizer, revealing End the Festivities, and played Kuldota Rebirth. I countered by casting Honorable Scout, gaining some life and passing the turn. They added Relic of Progenitus and Epicure, passing again. I searched for a land, played a Conduit Goblin and pumped Inspector to pressure them. They removed his Scout, so on my turn, I gave my creatures haste and attacked for 6. The opponent then cycled Relic and played back-to-back Kuldota Rebirth. I top-decked another Honorable Scout, putting me at 32 life, played a Goblin and passed. I cracked a clue and drew an Inspector. Attacking, I traded Goblin for 2 creatures. They kept passing, so I attacked again. They double-blocked the Inspector, so I used Lightning Bolt to keep it alive. Post-combat, I played Skyfisher, and they killed Scout with the trigger on the stack. I returned Inspector, gaining a clue token. They quickly rebuilt with some spells but still couldn't break through. I drew another Skyfisher, used it to return Inspector for more tokens, and swung with Skyfisher in the air. They cracked Synthesizer and dealt with my flyer, then attacked with Percussionist, which I led through. Things took a turn when I drew Eagles of the North, giving +1/+0 to my creatures and attacking. They chump blocked, going down to 6 before they played another Kuldota Rebirth and Percussionist. I attacked in the air, dropping them to 1, then hardcast Oliphaunt to close out the game, proving that this deck is a Reanimator scam.